Paula, thank you so much for joining me today.
Great, Chris. Delighted to be with you.
So, Paula, we're going to be talking about brand loyalty today. But before we jump into that and before we get started, can you tell everyone a little bit about yourself, what you currently do, and also what was your journey like to get here?
Thanks, Chris. Yes, yeah. Well, would you believe I started my marketing career in digital marketing? So very much in your world, which would have been, actually, I'm going to age myself now, but over 20 years ago. So in 1999, I started with British Airways, working on their digital and e-commerce strategy here in the Middle East where I live. So it was an extraordinary journey, and obviously just the exponential growth of digital has been a very exciting path to follow. But interesting, Chris, what I realized back in the last actually recession, 2008, there was such a huge focus on customer acquisition, I think, for so many years, particularly in the digital world, that in fact more and more clients were coming to me and asking, well, how do we keep these customers once we've got them? So I ended up running a huge loyalty program, which you're probably familiar with the UK version, called O2 Priority. So I ran that loyalty program in the Irish market through various different brand names for about 7 years. And I have to say, Chris, it completely converted me into, I suppose, first of all, the commercial benefits of focusing on customer retention. And obviously we keep, we need to keep filling the funnel, obviously, in terms of acquiring new customers. But loyalty is really where it's at from a commercial point of view. So some of the statistics are that it costs like 5 times more to acquire a new customer than it does to retain an existing one. So there are massive commercial benefits if you can actually just focus on keeping the customers you have and keeping them happy. So that's the journey I've been on. I suppose to answer the piece around currently, I moved into content creation. So again, I know something you're very passionate about. Originally with writing articles about, I suppose, the best global loyalty programs around the world. So focusing on restaurants and cafes and actually gas stations, for example. But I discovered the power of podcasting. And again, I think a similar journey to you. In 2019, I launched Let's Talk Loyalty. So it is the world's first podcast for loyalty marketing professionals. So anybody who's interested in learning about how to build brand loyalty, then absolutely my show is designed for them.
So I'm rather upset actually because you stole the one statistic that I knew that I could definitely call upon, which is it costs 5 times as much to sell to a new customer as it does to your existing customer. So basically everyone can stop listening to me and just focus on Paula for the rest of this show. But the key thing there though is it's something that is massively overlooked. And you mentioned it sort of, talking about years ago, people desperately looking to acquire customers. And I think everyone still focuses on that. And it's a problem, and I think it's a mindset problem sometimes where we think, everyone's talking about Facebook ads and you've got to, get the funnel and have that lead magnet. So you just keep bringing people in and then you keep, and it's something that a lot of people completely ignore is the fact that, like you said, somebody who's bought off you once is far more likely to buy off you again. Now, I'll probably caveat that with saying if you sell somebody a bad product once, the chances of selling a bad product to them the second time, nothing's going to fix that, right? There's no loyalty card to fix the problem of a bad product.
Absolutely.
But it is something that we find that a lot of people do lose that kind of perspective. And I think an example I'd probably give is that, we're working currently with a recruitment firm that's doing something completely out of the norm.
Okay.
But we've been working with them now for about 18 months, and it started with a super cheap, very simple, we were just there to offer a bit of support and help them get through things.
Yeah.
That has grown into a multi-thousand-pound a month contract whereby we now support them with all sorts of things. Their business is growing. They want to do more. We're helping them launch new products and new services. And that's something that a lot of people forget about. Looking after people, because loyalty isn't about a gift card or you got your 10 stamps and you get your free cup of coffee at the end of those 10. It's actually about how you look after people. And I think I want to talk to you about that as much as possible. What are some of the ways that people can do that online?
Well, it's a very good question, in fact, Chris, because I started, as I said, in online. So now I was lucky that I was doing it within an airline. So I was the e-commerce marketing manager for Emirates Airline in the year 2000, so the very first one. But what really intrigued me was we needed a way to change consumer behavior. And in fact, the mechanics of a loyalty program with points at the time, and in fact, obviously, Skywards continues to do that, it is probably the single most powerful lever that you can use. But I love your point, Chris, because I tend to categorize loyalty in two things. It's either the mindset and then it's the mechanics. So I think you're absolutely right. First and foremost, there's an incredible statistic actually that 73% of customers think that the purpose of a loyalty program is so a brand can demonstrate loyalty to them. And I fundamentally agree with that. But actually, when you talk to marketers, they think it's the opposite. So 66% of marketers think, actually, no, it's for my customer to be loyal to me. So everybody's waiting for somebody else to go first. So I really do think that point about the mindset can't be overstated. And again, the reason I didn't call my podcast Let's Talk Loyalty Programs was exactly for that reason. So I think there's an awful lot of integrity required, particularly for small business. So I know, Chris, a lot of your listeners would be running their own companies. And there is something that we talk about, whether it's online or offline, which is about what we call the founder's mindset. And it is, you know, even if you're not the founder, if you are the CEO or whatever position you're in, you really need to take that seriously, which is your point actually as well about you can't sell a bad product and expect them to be loyal no matter what you do. But I think there's to answer your question more directly, I suppose, for online businesses, I think it's a big challenge. And again, you'll be talking, I know, about content and all of those kind of things. What I have learned actually through the pandemic, and I guess this is like totally bang up to speed from my own experience, people want connection. So I think the days of transactional loyalty and just building a leaderboard or you know, points or, as you said, stamp cards, that's just not going to drive any connection for a customer. So I really believe that, yes, email marketing, for example, is still a very well proven tool, and we should continue to use that to drive loyalty. But actually new formats like voice and like video are incredible content formats. And I think absolutely anybody listening to this show has the potential to say, I can talk to my customers and they will listen because they already like me. So it's definitely not always about a structured loyalty program. Everybody can speak to their customers in a way that's scalable. And a great example actually on my own show a couple of weeks ago, an e-commerce retailer based out of Australia. It's a pure play. It's the biggest in Australia. It's now a publicly listed company. They actually acquired nearly 500,000 new customers during the pandemic. So they went public, it all exploded, everybody's going online, but actually their key communications channel is a podcast, which blew my mind, even though I'm already converted to the power of podcasting. But I think what intrigued me was it's skincare, it's makeup, and there's all the YouTubers and the influencers. You know, why aren't they doing it in a visual format? But actually voice, I think, is the most natural, normal method of communication. So I think that's one incredible way to build loyalty without even needing to think about technology and programs and all of the other big stuff that, again, there's plenty of ideas around as well.
My mind's racing. I have so many things to pick up on what you just said, which is a good sign.
Good.
So one of the things I was going to say is, and again, this isn't because they are our sponsor. It's actually because it's a friend of mine who sponsors our podcast. But Campaign Refinery is an email marketing tool. Okay. And they've literally just launched a points-based loyalty system for email subscribers. Ooh. So that if you're using their platform and you've got a big list, people are building up points for opens, for engagement, for clicking on links, whatever it might be. And they're building up this little point system which can take them to the next level of subscription or towards a discount for a product or whatever it might be. So I thought it was really interesting that you're mentioning that, because email is still a hugely active and phenomenally good performance if you've got the right list. But like everything, if you've got the wrong listeners on your podcast, it won't do as well. If you've got the wrong watchers or subscribers on your YouTube channel, chances are you won't sell as many products. But I thought that was a really interesting concept that they came up with for the email stuff. The second thing was to say I kind of a little bit sad because you talked about the airline points, and I have a huge amount of Avios points and I can't travel anywhere. But that's just a personal issue that I have to deal with.
Wonderful. So, yeah, I think everybody's feeling frustrated, Chris, particularly with the inability to travel. So, that's definitely a very common global issue. What I'm certainly seeing here in the region, for example, is airlines like certainly Emirates and Etihad, and I believe also British Airways also have new ways to use points. So, I think what all of the airlines have realized is yes, there's fantastic opportunities to travel, but that's very much in the future. So can we make merchandise available? So for example, I literally recorded a show yesterday where there's a full merchandise store for the Etihad guest program. I do believe Avios also have a store that you can spend your points on. I don't know for sure exactly what URL that would be on, but I think there's an incredible, I suppose, importance around flexibility, which again demonstrates how can a brand be loyal to the customer. Well, let's recognize that Chris can't travel and he's got all these points building up. So let's find another way for him to use them. So I'm a big fan of using points in non-airline ways. So, we talk a lot at the moment, for example, about forming partnerships, and there are really good ways. Actually, another example, I was talking to a guy yesterday down in South Africa, a banking loyalty program, and they also have a facility where you can use your loyalty points to buy airtime or data, or you can even pay your electricity bill. So again, for anybody who has, the opportunity to just integrate and just essentially allow somebody to transfer their benefits over to a partner and use them in a different way, guaranteed that member, that customer will feel incredibly loyal because you've made the reward accessible. So it's really powerful.
It's one of those things that we often, again, I feel like the mindset is the biggest challenge, right? It's not thinking, well, those are just airline points and therefore they're airline points and they're like, when you can travel, you can use them again. It's being open, like you said, that founder's mindset, trying to do your best for your audience, for your customer, for the people that are part of your community, and doing it in a way that makes sense to them, not just what makes sense to you financially, right?
Totally, totally. And I love that you used the word community as well, Chris, because that's another huge trend. So I think for a lot of small business owners, again, it mightn't make sense to be thinking about a structured points-based loyalty program, but it might be something like, well, listen, how can I bring my customers together as a community for maybe a lunch, maybe, now that, for example, those kind of facilities are open again, and really allow them to feel like they're part of my community, that I'm bringing them together. They probably have similar business needs, frustrations and challenges. They probably don't want to be off doing networking, but if you can say, well, look, you're all part of my business, I want to take you all to lunch, maybe 5 or 6 people, you will create extraordinary loyalty, and I guarantee those customers won't ever want to leave because they feel like they're part of your business and that you value them. So again, I do think community is a really big opportunity to derive loyalty.
I probably, again, because what you've mentioned there, and I think the lunch ideas, stuff like that is a fantastic way of doing it. We do something that's really silly and it's quite simple. But
tell me.
We just made some mugs.
Okay.
Like, it sounds ridiculous, but we just made some mugs with our logos on. And we were on a call one day and we made them internally for the team. We were on a Zoom call during lockdown and stuff. And we sat there sort of sipping coffee and everyone's like, oh, you got the Social Link mugs, you got the Social Link mugs. And we just sort of clicked, and it was like that. Yeah, we do. And actually, what's your address? So we sent all of our clients a couple of mugs for sort of teams and for whoever that we were working with. So they all had a mug. And basically, every single one of them sent back at least one selfie with them with their mug. Some of them using it with like an AeroPress, making fancy coffee and stuff like that. And we were just amazed because it's not a big thing, right? And our clients know we don't have budgets to take them to, a Manchester United football game in a box or anything like that. But it's the mindset of giving something to the people that you do value and the clients that are there that support your business. And it was small. It wasn't, I think the mugs were costing us, again, sorry to the clients that are listening, you're worth more in my heart, but it's about a tenner. And it doesn't matter. And it's print on demand and we ship them out to them and they get to receive them. And that was it. It was just something very, very basic. And I'm not saying that makes them want to stay with us, but the response that we got when we started to get the photos showed us that, yes, they are part of our community. And actually, they do think of us and they do introduce other people to us. And that to me is what's important, because they do kind of feel like an extended family almost.
For sure. And that really demonstrates, Chris, I suppose a couple of principles. First of all, relevance, because at the end of the day, I think without exception, we all drink a lot of tea and coffee when we're working. So that's amazing. And also, actually, an example, I was speaking at a loyalty conference recently, and one of the suppliers also sent mugs to all of the presenters and all of the attendees. So you might kind of say, oh, it's just a silly idea, but actually it's not, because first of all, it's got longevity. And also what it's doing is that whole thing about emotional loyalty. So again, as kind of, loyalty geeks, we talk a lot about the difference between transactional loyalty and emotional loyalty. And I think a lot of people have said, oh, emotional loyalty, that's, making a donation to charity or, something like that, which I don't think it is. I think that's a box ticking exercise. So again, it's what can I do that will really make somebody feel like actually they thought about me, and that's what matters. And again, through pandemic times, really connection, consideration, community. These are the things that people value an awful lot more. So I definitely think you're on the money. That's a perfect strategy, and we all know it's not about how much you spend. It's about how thoughtful it is. And people will definitely feel more loyal to Social Link as a result of that.
Fingers crossed, clients, if you're listening, you heard it. Technically, you have to be more loyal.
Totally.
It is an interesting thought, though. And like you said, it is about the emotional side of it. And I think that's something, again, we can get too bogged down in transactional. So it's, the idea of loyalty being giving somebody 10% off. I disagree with that. And I think value comes in lots of different ways. We try our best to go above and beyond for all of our customers. So if they have a package with us that equals X, most months we'll give them X plus 10% delivery kind of side of things. We'll give more than what we're paid to do. But I think a lot of people get bogged down in if I give 10% off because they've been a customer for 6 months or whatever it might be, or they've bought multiple times. I think that's a challenge for people to get around. Again, probably we're still talking about the same thing, which is that mindset idea. But how do you kind of help people to see that there's more to it than just a financial benefit or a financial discount to try and gain loyalty?
Well, I think you have to talk to them on a human level, Chris, because at the end of the day, most of us have been there. We've had the 10% discount and we kind of went, well, yeah, So, I genuinely think the discount mentality and culture, maybe from time to time, if you know that a client's having a tough time or whatever, you can say, look, okay, we'll adjust the fees or whatever, but it genuinely doesn't achieve anything. I think it's a very old-fashioned mindset, and I think everybody has moved beyond that. And I think one of the other kind of new ideas, which is probably more an innovative solution if you're trying to do something for your clients. One of the kind of cool ideas that I've seen both in the US and in the UK, and again it's probably an idea for small businesses that want loyal customers, but it's give them a fixed price, and I'm sure you do this, but to do that in a retail context. So subscription programs are probably the next big thing in terms of retail, and Pret a Manger I know does it in the UK, Panera Bread does it in the US, and a lot of people I'm talking to are saying, well, hang on a second, why would I give, unlimited coffee for $9 a month, for example, like Panera Bread do? But the extraordinary thing is that once those customers have that freedom to enjoy your product, actually the upsell, the cross-sell, the figures are absolutely extraordinary. They quoted, for example, with Panera Bread that it goes from 4 visits a month to 9 visits a month. So you actually get increased footfall. And I definitely think there's a mindset again at the current time, which is, do you know what? Actually, I need a bit of certainty. There's so much anxiety around. If you can help me navigate, then I'm going to feel more loyal. So I definitely think about a paid loyalty program. And also perhaps the most undervalued concept is, again, a mindset piece, and it's around simplicity. So for my show, the single most listened to episode of Let's Talk Loyalty is about the theme of simplicity. And one of my guests talked about the correlation between a simple brand and a valuable brand. And you only have to think about things like Google or Netflix to go, yep, I know those brands, I get what they do, and of course, there's an inherent value there. So I really think that anybody who's listening, it doesn't have to be complicated. The simpler, in fact, the better, and definitely people appreciate it.
Well, I think the idea of the unlimited coffee thing, the ramifications have to be huge. If I have that, I'm going to tell people, well, let's meet there. You know, that's my coffee sorted, but they need a coffee, so buy them a coffee. Or, you know, on your second coffee of the day, you decide it's time for lunch, so you pick up a sandwich or anything else. Like the knock-on effect is huge. Like you tell your friend, well, why don't you get it as well? And then that way we can just meet there for coffee and no one pays anything more than the $9. And yeah, I can see it. And I think, again, you're right. If you can create the simplest version of it, I think that always helps people, because as soon as you get into, and I've seen this a lot, especially in tech, where you get into sort of tiered structure approach, whereby like as long as you're at this stage, it's okay. But once you hit this stage, then the price drops, but it drops per number of uses and one thing. And you kind of look at it and you're going, I can't tell if I'm getting a good idea or a bad idea, good deal, bad deal. I don't know what's going on. You just click sign up and then you eventually find out that actually you got done for a lot of extra money for whatever reason. But I think there's a lot of things like that, you know, the simpler version, I agree with you as well. A subscription basis is huge. You know, I think that's a great way. And I think a lot of people have done it now for even simple things, you know, whether it's the Dollar Shave Club or groceries, even Amazon doing it, you know, just sign up and get your monthly washing tablets for the dishwasher or for the washing machine or whatever it might be. It's just simple, and you'll pay that little bit more. And yes, you may have a little bit extra left over in the cupboard at the end of the month and you haven't quite finished that box yet or whatever else, but the simplicity of it is a good bonus, I think.
And again, you know, for anybody who's in, particularly, I think, retail businesses, the idea of monthly recurring revenue that you can build on and again retain those subscribers, like that's an extraordinarily powerful mindset. So I think when customers, you know, opt into a subscription program, they're buying into a bigger relationship. And there's a fantastic statistic which I've been doing loads of preparation, Chris, you can tell for your show. So McKinsey said literally that subscribers, the likelihood of an increased spend with the brand is 60%, whereas with an ordinary, let's say, loyalty program, it's only 30%. So certainly, obviously, as a loyalty professional, I would say anything you do is bound to be felt, experienced and valued by the members. But actually, if they've bought into it, then you, first of all, you probably work harder to keep them because you never want to lose that subscriber. And you can start looking at the customer's lifetime value instead of hoping that they'll come back from month to month. And you can just, I think, relax a bit more and again not worry so much. And I guess something you're probably having to think about as well is the whole cookie problem that's coming in 2022. So you know, as I'm sure your listeners know, you know, Google is discontinuing support of cookies. So from our perspective as an industry, we're absolutely saying you need your own customer database. You need permission to market to them. You need to be able to connect with them because you're not going to be able to follow them around the internet anymore.
It's interesting you say it, because with our clients, and I do talk about it here on the podcast, we've spoken with a few different people, some people that are in like, you know, the Google ads and Facebook ads, retargeting and all this sort of stuff. The fundamental is, as an agency, I think the last time we ran ads for a client was in 2019.
Okay.
I think. Okay. And our main focus is actually on the community building. And actually, it's exactly what you've just mentioned. It's if you've got a good group of people around you, if you've got real people that value who you are and what you do, if they're telling their friends about it, if you're making it easy by sharing amazing content about who you are and what you do and keeping in touch with them, it becomes a very different offering and a very different challenge. And the majority of the people that I do know that really hammer on ads and that constantly talk about ads are people that don't necessarily have a product that has longevity. And I'm being very careful. I'm not saying this is true for every person who's running ads. I don't mean that. But if you have a bad product, you're constantly on the hunt for new clients. If you have a good product, you're hoping that you've got a good client that stays with you for many, many years. That's the goal. And I think that's where a lot of people lose sight of what's actually good for a business long term. And you mentioned it earlier as well. During the pandemic last year, in March, we basically spoke to all our clients. We sent a nice email going around saying, look, we've cancelled all contracts. None of you are obligated to pay us next month if you don't want to. Like, forget about it. We won't bring contracts back after this point because having you on a 6-month or a 12-month, it just doesn't make sense. But what we ask is message me, tell me, jump on a call. We can have a chat about your current position. And again, if we can, we'll spend an hour once a week free of charge, and we'll just keep you going and ticking over whilst things are locked down, whilst you're shut, whilst you can't work, whatever happens, and we'll make sure that you're ready to come back stronger than ever. Invariably, we had 2 or 3 clients that unfortunately haven't been able to come back. We've had a couple of clients that have come back, and we've had clients that are still in touch with us now, that are still involved in our community. They'll share our content. They'll always talk about us. They'll introduce us to people randomly, even though they can't use us currently. And we think that, to me, is worth 100 new potential clients, because that's where we actually want to be. That's who we are as people. We want to look after everyone that we work with. And again, why we focus on small, mid-sized businesses and startups more than anything else. But it's what we want to feel. Like, at the end of the day, is it better to keep getting new churn and burn customers that leave after 3 months because they don't have the revenue or because you're charging too much and actually it's hurting their business? Not really. Long term, that doesn't make sense. So again, I think it's everyone's got a different approach to these things, but I do think that's a huge one. Like, looking after people and listen to your clients, listen to them. If they're struggling, listen to that and understand what that means. And if you are in services, reduce the price to help them out. If it's a retail business and you've had a client that's bought off you for many, many years and there's a reason why they can't anymore, try and find out what it is, because you might be surprised, and look after them in whatever way you can.
Yeah, that's a beautiful example, Chris, and certainly if I have any potential business in the UK, I'll be sending it your way for sure. But
Appreciate
you know,
it.
just yeah, for sure. No, absolutely. Like, we're all here again to help each other. But to put, you know, the positioning that we would use again as, you know, loyalty geeks, you know, we talk about people who are, you know, disengaged, for example, you know, almost detractors. In fact, you know, there is a whole net promoter score, a scale that we use to measure how engaged generally consumers are. It's more a B2C thing, but it does go from detractors through to passive customers, through to advocates. So I can hear that what you understand extremely clearly is we want people to advocate for us. And there's nothing more powerful, no matter how good your advertising is, no matter how good your marketing is, or even how good your product is. The best form of marketing is somebody else saying, Chris is amazing, you got to go to him. So that is absolutely the best way of driving loyalty. So clearly you're doing a great job.
And for anyone who's listening, if you're wondering what the Net Promoter Score actually is, you've seen it 1,000 times minimum. It's that beautiful question that says, on a scale of 1 to 10, how highly would you, or how likely would you recommend this product, service, company? That's what the Net Promoter Score works on. And it is a fantastic concept. There's a very good book I read many years ago about this, which I think is just called the Net Promoter Score. That's how I learnt about it. But it is something to think about, and it is a fantastic way to gauge how people feel about your brand or your products as well.
For sure, absolutely. And to identify red flags as well, Chris. You know, I think some of us are in businesses where we're ripe for disruption. And, you know, if you understand your Net Promoter Score, that's an indicator of future loyalty. So again, we all have our historical picture, but how much visibility do you have of what's coming down the track? So you're absolutely right. Fred Reichheld is the author and the creator of Net Promoter Score. And yeah, I love it actually for its simplicity, back to the same point that we talked about earlier. And I think the reason that it's been seen, and again, plenty of people challenge it, but the reason I like it is it's really when you ask somebody, would they put their reputation on the line? Will they advocate for you? So that's a different level of, yeah, okay, it's the nearest store, so I'll go there. You know, I'm passive, so it's definitely a different level of loyalty. So delighted that you're bought into the whole concept.
Yeah, well, it's also because what's interesting for a lot of companies, and they don't realize it, is it gives you a very specific metric that you can look to see if you're improving or doing worse. And I think it's something that a lot of people don't realize. If you're just solely looking at your revenues each month, you have no real indication. You could have had a great month. Somebody could have talked about you on YouTube and that spikes your revenue, whatever might happen. But actually knowing what your customers honestly feel and having that as a score that you can check in on every 6 months, every 3 months, whatever you want to do, depending on how many people you have. I think that's huge. And it's something that people get stuck in the weeds when it comes to statistics and data, and don't necessarily realize that sometimes it's the easiest, most simple version of it. And that, to me, the NPS is one of the best ones for that, in terms of just giving you a really simple overview as to how your customers feel about you and what you're doing. Okay, before we start wrapping up, what's the biggest thing that a small business could do right now to help them build loyalty?
I think if it's a small business, I would pick up the phone and have a conversation and say, I'm checking in with you. I really do appreciate your business. How are things going? And have that human connection and literally make it real. So you've already talked about it, Chris. You're already doing it. I think it can be scaled up. So if it's a slightly bigger company, I would say use the email marketing, but try and bring video, try and bring voice. So I think the days of text only are probably just, that's going to become too mundane, I think, in the future. So I would definitely say if you do need something to go to a couple of thousand people, then see what you can do in a different format where people are really, really grateful. And my other final one, actually, Chris, just as we close, I always believe you shouldn't capture data unless you're going to use it. So I think a lot of companies, for example, ask for date of birth. They want to understand the demographics of their customer. But then, my birthday comes around and nothing happens. And I'm kind of going, what happened? So if nothing else, either send the birthday email or send the birthday voucher for a little freebie or something as a gift. And again, people will feel, actually, this is my day, and they recognize that. So something any business can do.
It's a really easy one, actually, that, and it is something that a lot of people do mess up on. Not meaning to be bad or anything else, they just do, unfortunately.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Paula, where can people find you and where can people find your podcast as well?
Wonderful, Chris. Thanks a million. Yes, well, the show is called Let's Talk Loyalty. So you can go to letstalkloyalty.com. It's on all of the usual podcast channels like yourself, like Apple, for example. Or you can find me directly on LinkedIn. My full name is Paula Thomas, Thomas. So yeah, I would love to hear from you.
Fantastic. Paula, thank you so much.
Thank you, Chris.